Welcome to episode number 20 of Sir Kevin Says. Thank you for joining. It's exciting to me to be able to feature this individual, none other than Gary Vitti of the Los Angeles Lakers. He just released a book called 32 Years of Titles and Tears from the Best Seat in the House, which you can get on Amazon. Definitely worth the money. You'll be able to read so much about the LA Lakers, his childhood, his accomplishments, and as well as some of the crazy stories you ever hear about the NBA. Really, really cool. Invite you to buy it if you have not already. Gary Vitti has worked in the healthcare field for 40 years, with 32 of them as a head athletic trainer for the storied Los Angeles Lakers. During his tenure, the team won 14 division titles, 12 conference titles, and 8 N.B.A. championships. Vitti also represented the Western Conference at 4 All-Star games. He has worked side by side with Basketball Hall of Fame greats Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Shaquille O'Neal, Jamaal Wilkes, Bob McAdoo, Karl Malone, Gary Payton, Mitch Richmond, Dennis Rodman, Bill Sharman, Jerry West, Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, and future Hall of Famer Kobe Bryant. From 1984 to 1992, Vitti was also the head athletic trainer for the Los Angeles Strings of World Team Tennis. His teams and exhibition matches included, but were not limited to, tennis greats Jimmy Connors, John McEnroe, Bjorn Borg, Boris Becker, Martina Navoratola, Billie Jean King, and Chrissy Everett. In addition to his work experience, Vitti is also a published author, 32 Years of Titles and Tears from the Best Seat in the House, Icon Sports Publishing, 2019. He is a public speaker and lectures internationally. Since his retirement, he has given the 2019 commencement address to the University of Southern California's Department of Biokinesiology and Physical Therapy, along with keynotes including but not limited to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, the University of Utah College of Health, the Equinox National Forum, Explore Conference, Imaging Network Group Forum, and H-Waves National Sales. He has also spoken at conferences in Singapore, Shanghai, Orlando, and Sacramento. Along with his professional life, Vitti is known for his philanthropic work. He created the National Basketball Athletic Trainers Association Foundation, which during his tenure as chairman was involved with organ and tissue donation, the Miami Project for Paralysis, and the National Kidney Foundation, as well as providing countless scholarships for young athletic training students. Vitti created the National Athletic Trainers Association annual blood drive, now named in his honor, which set records for convention blood drives for the American Red Cross. Vitti's work has been recognized and awarded by the 26th U.S. Senate District, the 35th U.S. Congressional District, the City of Los Angeles, the California Legislature, U.S. Naval Medical Center of San Diego, his alma mater, Southern Connecticut State University, Philippine Sports Commission, N.B.A, Loyola Athletics, Team Heal, the West Coast Sports Medicine Foundation, STR Basket Italia, the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, and most recently became the national honoree for the Stanford Old-Timers Athletic Association. Vitti has 2 daughters, Rachel and Amelia, and lives in Manhattan Beach with his wife, Martha. In this podcast episode, Gary and I discuss how he finds happiness. This is mainly the reason for his book. He also includes what I learned about happiness, greatness, leadership, and the evolution of sports science. Really an amazing book. Again, I encourage you to buy it if you have not already. There are 19 other episodes you can check out, so make sure to do that. So without further ado, episode number 20 with Gary Vitti coming your way. Welcome to episode number 20 of Sir Kevin Says. Today I'm with Gary Vitti, former head athletic trainer of the Los Angeles Lakers. He just released a new book called 32 Years of Titles, Tears from the Best Seat in the House. Gary Vitti, how you doing?
Never better in my life, Kevin.
Thanks for doing this. Really
Thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me. I'm flattered.
Gary, what's new? How's everything?
Everything's great. The 2 new things in my life is I became a grandfather.
Congratulations.
And we released the book. And so everything's going great.
Yeah.
I couldn't be better in life. All my family and friends are all healthy, which is really all that kind of matters to me. And that comes out in the book in terms of the happiness part.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How's retirement treating you?
I love it. I love it. It's been 3 years. I miss, I mentioned this in the book that I do miss the camaraderie of the team, but I don't miss the grind and the stress and the pressure and all that. And
Yeah.
I'm right where I want to be in life.
That's good.
I'm very happy.
Yeah. What's your upbringing?
Yeah, originally I was born in Stamford, Connecticut, about 40 miles from the center of Manhattan. My parents immigrated from Italy to New York and then moved out to Connecticut, where my dad worked in a factory from the time he was 16 years old to 72 years old. And so we grew up pretty close to New York City. I had kind of the quintessential growing up period, in a very ethnic Italian family. When I was inside the house, I, grew up like I was in Italy. And then when I stepped out the front door, I stepped into America every day. So I had a great childhood.
Yeah. How did you realize your passion for sports medicine? I know that in the book you were mentioning that there was a kind of a change of heart.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my road to the N.B.A. was a circuitous one. I didn't go to my undergrad college experience, to be an athletic trainer. I didn't know what I wanted to do, quite frankly. In those days, you graduated from college in 4 years. And if you didn't, then you had some explaining to do, So I powered through it in 4 years and got out of college and kind of went into the corporate world. And I was there for 3 years. I worked for Johnson & Johnson, healthcare company, and decided that corporate life, wasn't my thing, wearing a suit every day and that kind of thing. And so I started looking at some other professions. And my sister was a librarian, and she was giving me this information that, the government, I think it still does it today, the government puts out information as to what they think are going to be the next fields of employment. And so, believe it or not, we're talking about 1979 now.
Yeah,
so I graduated from college in 76. 3 years later, it's 79. And one of these industries that's supposed to be big is meteorology. I said, well, that sounds pretty cool, chasing the weather. And I was pretty good in sciences. And so I decided to apply to some schools in meteorology. And one of the top schools in the country was the University of Utah. And I had never been west, and it seemed like a, good thing to do and a good idea at the time anyway. And so I was accepted, and so I went to school at the University of Utah in the meteorology program, and I very quickly found out that I had made a big mistake. Meteorology is physics on top of math, on top of physics, on top of math, and it's not that I couldn't do it. I could do it, but the people that are in these kinds of programs, I mean, they're real brainiacs. I mean, a lot of this stuff comes very, very naturally to them. For me, it was drudgery, studying all the time, and I said, I got to find something else to do, but I didn't know what. So I stayed in the program, and first semester, ends, and it's Christmas break, and so I hop in the car and I drive to LA. And I had two friends that I went to college with that were swim coaches at UCLA. And I started, telling them my dilemma. And so, we drive to LAX and we all fly back to New York and see our families, then, fly back to LA, and then I get in the car and drive back to Salt Lake. Well, on the way to the airport, on the way to LAX, one of them, his name is Rich Corso. He became a very famous water polo coach, the Olympic team water polo coach, head coach. He handed me a book called The Sports Medicine Book. That was the title. I didn't know anything about sports medicine. There was sports and there was medicine, but I didn't know there was sports medicine. And it was Dr. Gabe Merkin, is one of the very first sports medicine books. And he goes, you would be perfect for this. And he gave me this book, and I read it on the flight. And so by the time we got to New York, I had read the whole book. And I said, he's right. This sounds like it's right up my alley. It's what I want to do. So he came back to LA, got in the car, drove back to University of Utah, and I'm still in the meteorology program, but I called up the head athletic trainer, cold called him, I didn't know who he was, and asked if I could meet him. And he was really wonderful. His name is Bill Bean. He's now retired. He became a very close friend and mentor of mine. And I said, I've discovered this sports medicine, thing. Can you tell me about it? And he spent a lot of time with me. He spent an hour or two,
Wow.
very gracious.
Wow.
But he also told me, he goes, our program's full, because there weren't a lot of sports medicine programs.
Right.
So people that knew that that's what they wanted to do, they all flocked to a few schools in the country. Indiana had a program, Arizona had a program, Utah had a program. And he said, our program's full. And I said, okay, I will give myself this much credit that I took this initiative at the time. I said, would you mind on my spare time, if I came around the training room, I'll go stand in the corner. I won't talk to anybody. I won't touch anything. I just want to observe to see if this really is what I want to do. And if it is, I'll find a program to get into. And he said, sure. And that's what I did. And I was very dedicated at this. I mean, every free moment I had, I would go to the training room. Whether it was 30 minutes or 2 hours, and just stand in the corner and keep my mouth shut and just watch what everybody did. And it's an interesting concept. And once again, I talk about it in the book, that if you hang around a place long enough, you begin to become part of the fabric of that room, that place. And that's what happened with me. And so if you've ever been in a Division I college football training room prior to practice, it is wild. I mean, these guys are big, they're strong, they're pretty crazy. There's a lot of testosterone running around, and everybody's trying to get on the field. And like, you dress 60 guys maybe for a game, but there's probably 100 guys for practice. So it's a lot of guys. The trainers are really working hard to get these guys out there. And so one day, one of the players asked me for something, and I had observed long enough that I knew. I don't remember what it was. Like, maybe it was a Band-Aid or something, but I didn't want to touch anything, So I ran over to Bill Bean, who was the head trainer, and I said, that big guy over there asked me to do this. Should I do it? I know what to do. Everybody looks busy. He goes, yeah, just do it. So I did it. And then right after that, like within days, there was a big snowfall up in the mountains. And 2 or 3 of the student athletic trainers blew off their shifts, because as a student athletic trainer, you have to go work in the training room. They blew their shifts off to go skiing. They called in sick, basically. And Bean knew what they were doing, and he was angry about it. Because it puts a burden on everybody else if you don't show up for work, right? And he kicked them out of the program, which made room for me. Okay? and so I worked the rest of the year for that opportunity, and finished my master's degree and started my PhD, and kind of became his number one guy. And the other interesting thing, as I mentioned, it was 1979. So 79 was the same year that the New Orleans Jazz moved to Salt Lake. So the New Orleans Jazz moved to Salt Lake. Gary Vitti moves to Salt Lake, all in the same year. And I finished my master's degree, and the Jazz were looking for a part-time assistant. So we had a great basketball team at the U. That's when Danny Vrains and Tom Chambers and Pace Manning, these guys probably before you were born. But, they all ended up in the NBA. But I really didn't work basketball. I worked football and baseball. I was a football trainer at the U. And so I had some time after football season was over. And so I went down and started helping the Jazz out part-time. And in, I guess it was 1982 or 82, I believe, they fired Paul Westhead. And so actually it must have been 83. It might have been the 82-83 season.
Okay.
They fired Paul Westhead, and Bill Burka, who started in the NBA with the Lakers, but then left the Lakers to go to the Jazz. They fired Paul Westhead, and they hired Pat Riley. Riley never coached a day in his life. He went from being a player into the broadcast booth, and now he becomes the head coach.
Right.
But he remembered Burka, okay, from the old days. And so he calls Burka and he says, I'd like you to be my first assistant. So Burka leaves the Jazz to go to the Lakers. Well, Burka was there when I was there. And so fast forward a few years later to 1984, okay, the Lakers job opens up and Riley's looking for a young, progressive athletic trainer, not the traditional old guy.
Yeah.
And Burka says, well, you ought to talk to Gary Vitti. You know, he was working on his PhD. You know, he was at the forefront of sports medicine at the time. So I think the audience needs to understand that there's been athletic trainers around since the gladiators. But sports medicine as a discipline is probably only about, at the most, 50 years old, okay? Closer to 40. And the true evidence-based stuff is probably the last 10 or 15 years. So when you start looking at it that way, you can see that I arrived on the scene just at the beginning of the sports medicine evolution. And so I was cutting edge because that's when cutting edge started, when I started. So it was a good transition for me. And you know, I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Which, you know, for young people out there, you know, there's a few things. I mean, because I get asked all the time, like, how'd you get in the NBA? How can I get in the NBA? So I think the very first thing you have to be is you got to try to be the best. Okay. You don't have to be the best. I'm not saying I'm the best. I've never said that. I think I'm better than most, maybe not as good as some. You know, there's some really great athletic trainers out there, very, very bright people. So that's number one. It's hard work. It's being dedicated and trying to be the best that you can be.
Yeah.
Now, you could be the best, but if nobody knows that you exist, then, you know, you're not going to find your way in. I mean, it's kind of like having the best website in the world, but if there's no traffic to it, then nobody knows it exists.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the same thing. So part B is you begin to network, and so to do that, generally my recommendation is you go to a school that has a history of employing their athletic trainers. Okay, and then you begin to network, and your reputation gets out there, and you know, if opportunity knocks, then you walk through the door. Right. You know, and it worked for me, and it's worked for people that I've mentored and counseled, and so you know, that's how I ended up here.
Are you currently mentoring anybody right now?
You know, I talk to a lot of young people all the time. I'm on 2 boards of sports medicine groups, the 2 doctors. Dr. Clarence Shields, who was the doctor for the LA Rams, the original LA Rams, not the ones that are here now. And Dr. Keith Fader, who's also a local orthopedist here. And they've both started foundations that serve athletes in underserved communities. So we go into these high schools and we do physical exams on all the kids, all the sports, all for free. Doesn't cost the school district anything. Doesn't cost the parents or the kids anything. And even some of the surgeries that have been done for free. And so they have young athletic trainers employed in these schools and try to help them and any other student athletes that are interested. But you know, somehow people find me and you know, if you need advice, then
reach out.
I'll give it to you. Yeah, you know, you might not like it, but I'll tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah, that's good
from my perspective.
Right. You know, I wrote down a bunch of notes, and one of the things in chapter 1, actually, you talk about the instance where Jerry West, the Lakers fly you to meet with them. Yeah, and Jerry West picks you up. Yeah. Right, in a blue Benz, right? In a blue Benz. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
I'll give you the play-by-play. So once again, Burka talks to Riley, and then Riley talks to Wes, and they said, let's bring this kid down. I was about 30 years old at the time. Let's bring this kid down. I want to talk to him about the head athletic trainer's position. And so they call me up, and they send me a first class ticket. I had never flown first class before, so this was pretty impressive. Now, you have to understand my mentality at the time. My mission was to finish my PhD and stay in academia the rest of my life. I wanted to work at like a major university, Division I program.
And you were creating a program yourself, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I left the University of Utah and was hired by the University of Portland to create a sports medicine program.
Yeah.
So universities were starting to identify that sports medicine, athletic training as a major would attract students to their university, which means they have to pay tuition.
Yeah.
So it's a basic business decision, right? It's a product. You're offering, a degree in this particular discipline. And so University of Portland called me and they said, we heard about you and we want someone to come up here and start a program. Would you be interested? And I said, sure. So I went up there and we were building a $7.5 million facility. It was an arena. There was going to be a athletic training room and a weight room and a human performance lab. And I was going to be in charge of all that. And so I did that. And then 2 years into it, the Lakers call me. They send me this first class ticket. So I fly down and Jerry West picks me up at the airport in a navy blue Mercedes with tan interior. So I'd never flown first class before. I had never been in a Mercedes before. And Jerry West, who's like my childhood idol, is driving it. To enhance the day even more, he drives me to the Fabulous Forum, as it was known in those days. And USA Basketball happened to be playing Spain for the gold medal in the '84 Olympics on the day that I'm in that building interviewing for the job. So it's like this magic carpet ride of hoops. And I meet, for hours and hours with Pat Riley and Jerry West, two iconic people in professional basketball. And now all of a sudden I'm going, maybe this academia thing isn't where it's at. Working for the Jazz, they were so bad in those days.
Yeah.
These were the days prior to Karl Malone and John Stockton.
Okay.
So they were the doormat of the league. So my impression of the NBA, wasn't that good. We were losers.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, wow, this is a whole different wavelength there. This is a first-class organization. And I said, maybe this is what I should do with my life. Because Pat Riley actually said to me, I said, Pat, I'm not sure that I want to go back into the NBA. I think I want to stay in academia. And I told him my reasons why. And he said, well, you can do everything you want to do. But instead of doing it at the college level, you could do it with the greatest athletes in the world. That was a pretty,
both statements.
And so, you hear that from a guy like that and you're like, And so now all of a sudden I really want the job. The problem is when the interview was over, they told me to cross the street. Now, the forum was in Inglewood. So it was not a great place at the time. And there was a real seedy hotel called the Airport Park Hotel, which was next door to the forum. They told me to go walk across the street and take the shuttle back to the airport. So I was
you flew economy back home, right?
No, I didn't fly. No, I had a round-trip first-class ticket, but it was like no more Mercedes, no more Jerry West chauffeuring me around. Maybe they don't want me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But a couple of days later, Jerry called me and they offered me the job, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
That was 35 years ago.
Yeah.
So I did 32 as the head athletic trainer, 2 as an assistant, and then completely retired after that.
I remember in the book too, Jerry, I think at the end of the conversation you guys were having, one of the things he says, Pat's the one that's going to be handling all these, different ordeals, but just remember, I'm the boss.
Yeah, his last thing to me was, well, do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, I had several questions. But one of them, the very last question, I said, I have one more question. This is really, really important. Because The day they fired Paul Westhead,
Mm-hmm.
he had just won a championship the year before.
Wow.
And so the day they fired him, they did that against the Utah Jazz in Utah. So I'm sitting on the other bench, okay, when they fired this guy, okay? And so I saw how fragile life can be in the NBA, you know. You can just wake up one morning and just say, hey, listen, we don't want you anymore.
Yeah.
You know, if they fire the head coach, they could certainly fire the athletic trainer.
Right.
You know? So I said, you know, Jerry, I was there. And when you guys got rid of Paul, and after he won a championship. So I understand how this works. So what I need to know is at the end of the day, you know, who am I loyal to? You know, who's going to control my life? Is it going to be Magic Johnson, one of the players? Is it going to be Pat Riley, the coach? You know, who am I loyal to? And he leaned back in his chair, and I remember this like it was yesterday, and he said, listen, he said, I'm going to let Pat Riley make the decision as to who the next head athletic trainer is going to be. Because you have to work closely with him, and he travel with him, and you know, I'm going to let him make the decision. He said, and I hope you get the job because I like you. If you do get it, even though he's the guy that's hiring you, I want you to remember one thing. Okay, what's that? And he pounded his chest. He said, I'm the boss.
Wow.
Which means my loyalty started and ended with him, even though Pat was the one that hired me.
Yeah.
And it became a you know, true to life, because not long after, maybe 5 years later, Pat left, you know, either of his own accord or under pressure, depending on who you talk to. Jerry was still there, and so I was always loyal to Jerry and Dr. Buss, the owner. And then Jerry left and went to Memphis, and then Mitch Kupchak took over as the general manager, and that loyalty just transferred to Mitch. And so those were the two GMs that I had. I had 13 coaches over my career, but only two general managers and basically two owners.
Yeah.
Dr. Buss, and then after he passed away, the family took over the team.
Yeah. You put in your book 12 plus 2 plus 1.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I showed up in 1984, the 84-85 season, the Lakers had just lost to the Celtics in the finals for the 8th time.
Yeah.
They played them 8 times and they lost all 8. So there was one mission and one mission only for that team, and that was to beat the Boston Celtics. Even on my interview, I understood that clearly. It wasn't just to get to the finals, or it wasn't just to, you know, be good. It was to beat the Celtics, not anybody else, okay? Because they were going to be there, which means we had to get there, and when we got there, we had to beat them. And I realized that. And then I learned a lot about having a mission. And I learned this from Pat, from Coach Riley. You know, for a mission to be successful, everybody has to be on the same page. And I talk about this in the book in the sense that I knew that I was paid to render an opinion. But if my superiors disagreed with how I wanted to do it, then it became my job to prove that I was wrong and that they were right. Because we all had to be on the same page. You couldn't be there going, now we should have done it this way.
Yeah.
So you can't have that. Okay. You have to. So that mission, Riley coined a statement that he said it's 12 plus 2 plus 1. In those days, we only had 12 players on the roster. 12 players, 2 coaches, Riley and Burka, and 1 athletic trainer, me. 12 plus 2 plus 1. We were the 15 people that were the inner sanctum of the team when the game was going on. 5 of the 15 were on the court. 10 of us were on the bench. 7 players, Coach Riley, Coach Burka, and me. Okay, we were the 10 on the bench. That 12 plus 2 plus 1 came from Pat's playing days, because at that time, that's all there was. There was the head coach, first assistant, the athletic trainer, and the players. But in reality, it should have been 12 plus 3 plus 1, because by the time I got there in 84, the Lakers hired a second assistant, and that was Dave Wall. He ended up leaving the next year to go to the New Jersey Nets. He was their head coach, and he's been general manager in different teams, Miami, Boston, the Clippers. Wealth of experience, brilliant basketball mind. So it should have really been 12 plus 3 plus 1, but Pat kept calling it 12 plus 2 plus 1. Yeah. So I say this in the book just for consistency. I'm going to continue to say 12 plus 2 plus 1, but there actually was another guy, and I want to give Dave that respect of putting him out there. Now, his job was not just as an assistant coach, but he was an advanced scout. So the 12 plus 2 plus 1 could kind of look like that, because he wasn't always with the team. He was always on the road scouting the next team we were going to play. Yeah. But he would try to get back for practice and the game. Okay? So 12 plus 2 plus 1, 12 plus 3 plus 1. The point is that Riley kept things tight. Yeah. Tight. This was the group. So in reality, Jerry West wasn't even part of the 12 plus 2 plus 1. Chick Hearn wasn't part of the 12 plus 2 plus 1. Anybody who wasn't part of the 12 plus 2 plus 1 had another comment. He would call them a peripheral opponent. Right. So your opponent is a team you're going to play, but then there's all these other peripheral opponents. Even your family, your wife and kids became peripheral opponents because they distracted you from your job. Right? You know, and he was a really intense guy. But I loved Coach Riley, and I love him today. And he told me on my interview, he said, I like you because you're young, you have some experience, but you're young, and you haven't been scarred by the N.B.A. yet, and I can mold you into what I want you to be. And that's exactly what he did. And I allowed it to happen because it was good. I knew that he was going to make me be the best I could be on any given day, because that's what he did to people. He was an intense guy. Yeah. You know?
You talk about in your book that this rule of 12 plus 2 plus 1 was kind of taken to exception when you guys got into the bus, because Kareem's father came on board. Yeah. And Pat didn't say anything.
Right. So once again, very tightly knit. We actually, I don't put this in the book, but we actually started traveling a public PR guy that year. Before that, they didn't travel. And so, to be honest, once in a while there was somebody else on the bus, but part of the organization, but not part of the 12 plus 2 plus 1. But going back to your example of game 1, so here we are, 8 losses to the Celtics. The year before, they blow the series. I mean, they had the Celtics right where they wanted them. Kevin McHale clotheslines, Kurt Rambis changes the whole tone of that game, and basically the series. And I explain all that in chapter 1 and 2. And so now we're coming back for revenge. And we have to beat them. I mean, if this is the 9th time that we're going to play the Celtics in the finals, and we've lost 8. We have to beat them. If we don't, they're probably going to dismantle the team and try to find another way to beat them. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure, but also a tremendous amount of confidence going into game 1. And we get blitzed. I mean, I think it was 34 points.
148 to 114.
Yeah, so, I mean, they put a hammer on us, and it was on Memorial Day, and that game became known as the Memorial Day Massacre. Yeah. Kareem played horribly. I mean, Parrish was outrunning him, and he just looked like an old man. And he had migraines and stuff. There's reasons, no excuses, but reasons. And so we come in the locker room after the game, and we're devastated. We can't even look at each other. We just didn't get. We didn't lose by 1 point.
Right.
I mean, we got hammered, right? And Kareem gets up and addresses the team and apologizes to everyone for his performance and guarantees that we're going to come back and win the series. But the thing, so that's what the book is about, lessons that I learned. The subtitle of the book, it's 32 Years of Titles and Tears from the Best Seat in the House, but the subtitle is what I learned about happiness, greatness, and leadership.
Yeah.
And this was a lesson that I learned from Kareem, where if something happens bad, okay, you look in the mirror and you start with that person. You take responsibility for it, for your part in it. And that's what Kareem did. I also learned that the second phase of the responsibility thing is you start beating yourself up over it. You feel bad, right? That part, it's part of the process, but the sooner you get through it, the better, because it's not very constructive to keep beating yourself up over it. The most important part is to learn from your mistake and not repeat it. And I learned that lesson from Kareem. Okay? That's the message he sent. So we have 3 days between games 1 and 2. And Riley just beats the team up. I mean, he's angry, and he's setting a really intense tone. And Kareem was, pretty old at that point. And we used to save him for games. So he would do some things in practice, but for the most part, we didn't beat him up in practice. Now, they're telling him to go sit down and rest, and he's saying no. Kareem did everything. He did every minute of every practice, every drill, everything. He did everything for those 3 days until we got to game 2. And I was always the first one on the bus. I get on the bus, and then here comes Coach Riley. He gets on the bus, and some players are now getting on the bus, to go to the arena to play the game. And here comes Kareem. And behind Kareem is Mr. Lou Alcindor, who's Kareem's father, right behind Kareem, getting on the bus. And I'm looking at this and going, oh boy, what's going to happen here? Because we don't have anybody else on the bus. It's 12 plus 2 plus 1. Yeah. That's who's on the bus. And I'm wondering what Pat's going to do. He's going to say, stop him and say, sorry, sir, you take a cab. He doesn't say anything. He puts his hand out. They shake hands. They sort of nodded at each other. And there was some sort of understanding that kind of went between them, that Kareem needed his father. And, Mr. Alcindor is a very, very stoic man. He was a Metro cop in New York. Kareem would tell us stories. He chased some guy into the subway tunnel. Yeah. I'm not talking about the tunnel where you wait for the train. I'm talking about in the tunnel, inside the tracks, like where the rats are and all that. Yeah. An armed subject. I mean, he was chasing a guy that had a gun. He went in there alone after him. He was a very brave man. Right? Yeah. And so we'd known who he was. We had a lot of respect for him. And it just sort of set this tone that, when he showed up, it was like, wow. And Pat was working on his pregame talk on the bus. And he was really good at these pregame talks. He was a big motivator, motivational speaker. With the arrival of Kareem's father, Pat reflected on his own father. And he then told us this story about his childhood and his father. And his father played baseball, professional baseball, and was a baseball coach. And Pat had some older brothers. And his father used to make his older brothers take young Pat, little Pat, to the park. And he would get beat up every day. And finally, his older brothers went to their father and said, why are you making us take our younger brother to the park? He gets beat up every day. And his father looked at Pat and said, there's going to come a time in your life that you have to plant your feet and stand up for yourself. And so that's the story that Pat told before the game. And this was the day that the Lakers finally had to plant their feet, stand up for themselves, and beat the bullies of Boston.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. He wound this team up into a tizzy. They went out on the floor, and we won the next 4 to 5 games.
Yeah.
And beat them in 6 on their own parquet floor, which had never been done by any team.
Yeah.
Okay? And then, all the skeletons came out of the closet, and we shoved the leprechaun in the closet, and that was it. I mean, we made history.
What was it like winning the first championship?
The example that I use in the book is Samuel Jackson, who's a big Laker fan, great guy, great actor, great guy. And I heard him say once, I don't know if people know this, but, he was a crack addict at one time in his life. Okay. And he said that the first time you smoke crack, I wouldn't know because never have, never will. The first time you smoke crack is the best it'll ever be for you. And that's how you get addicted to crack, because you keep chasing that high.
Yeah.
And you can never get there. So, you keep chasing it. It's the same thing when you win a championship. Once you win one, it's so euphoric that you want to win another one and another one and another one. And you keep trying to win. It's much healthier than smoking crack, obviously. Okay? But it never feels quite the same as the first time you win. And I mentioned the book. Very often I've heard players towards the end of their career saying, I just want to win one and then I'll retire. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Losing makes you want to retire. Winning keeps you in the game. Okay? But you never quite feel the same. That first championship it's sensational.
Yeah. Leadership starts with someone who has earned and commanded respect. That's one of the quotes I took from chapter 2. Talk a little bit about Dr. Jerry Buss and what he meant to you.
Dr. Buss, to me, hit the trifecta of human values. And people say, well, what does that mean? Well, human values, like what's important to you? Okay, what do you value? And I say this about relationships, that good relationships are based on values. What's important to you is important to me. And if we agree on what's valuable, then that's the foundation of a relationship. We might disagree on things. We might even get angry with each other. But if you have that foundation, there's always something to come back to, a level of respect. And, we're talking about a team right now, but the same is true for a marriage. Same is true for a family with your children. I mean, families fight. Sometimes you get mad at your mom and dad or your brother and sister, but you don't stop loving them. Well, Dr. Buss, had, once again, what I call the trifecta of human values, which is honesty, kindness, and loyalty. And he was all of those 3 things and 100% of each. I mean, I always thought that maybe kindness was the most important value. And I changed that tune, probably in my 40s, maybe 20 years ago, and realized that I think honesty is the number one value. Kindness is number 2, and then loyalty. And Dr. Buss was all those things. He was honest man. You might not like what you heard, but it was going to be true. He was very generous. He was a kind man. And he was very loyal. I mean, he had people that, if you did your job, you kept it, and so when, that leadership coming from someone who's earned and commands respect, that also pertained to Kareem's father. Everybody had so much respect for the man that all he had to do was step on the bus. He didn't say one word. Kareem's father didn't say anything, but his appearance changed the whole tone going to that game. Dr. Buss was similar. He would come to practices sometimes, not all the time, not often, but when he walked in the gym, all of a sudden the energy went up. And it's not because, people were saying, oh, well, the boss is here, let me work hard. It wasn't that. It was just out of respect for the man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was that. And he was that to me. And he was good to me. And he would ask me my opinion about things. Several times a year, maybe about 3 times a year, we would have a heart-to-heart talk. It would never be a scheduled thing. It would never be, Gary, I want you to come and meet me at this hour. It was always sort of off the cuff at the spur of the moment. Training camp, if there was ever any dead time, sitting by the pool in Hawaii or something, I would find an hour to get some exercise, go for my run, and then I'd be walking, past the pool deck to go back to my room. And he said, you got 15 minutes? I said, yeah, Dr. Buss, I'll find 15 minutes for you, and sit down. And he'd ask me about the team. He'd ask me about the coaches. He'd ask me, about certain individuals. And then usually maybe during the mid-year, he would find a road trip that he wanted to come on, and we'd find some time maybe in the lobby bar or restaurant. And then in the playoffs, he was always with the team.
Yeah.
And, we would talk for 30 minutes, an hour, I don't know how much, of whatever I said, he took to heart, but I'll tell you this, he made me feel like he did. So he never blew me off or, he really made me feel wanted.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling, coming from the top brass, because I talk to other athletic trainers, there's plenty of teams that their management style isn't like that at all. They make you feel like you're walking a tightrope all the time, and you're, one move away from getting kicked out the door,
right,
and looking over your shoulder all the time. And, that's not the way the Lakers organization was run, with Dr. Buss and Jerry West, and then later Mitch Kupchak and Pat Riley. Pat Riley had a philosophy. I talk a lot about Pat in the book because I admire him so much, but he had a philosophy that for a criticism to work, because there's a lot of criticism in the NBA, you have to have thick skin to work in the NBA, because someone's going to call you out on something, okay, for sure, because you can't be perfect. You can't. And that brings to mind the chapter about the officials. I want to come back to that trying to be perfect thing. Okay, Riley had a ratio of 4 compliments to 1 criticism.
Right.
So along the way, he always complimented you about things. Hey, you did a good job with that. Hey, I like the way you did that. So that when you did something that he didn't like, and he told you
exactly,
it meant something.
Right.
Because if you're critical of people all the time, if you're a screamer, like there's lots of coaches that screaming, yelling all the time. Well, if you're like that all the time, then screaming and yelling becomes like talking. And now something really is wrong, and it's time to get your attention.
Yeah.
How do you do it? There's no place to go. You've already been at the highest octave all the time, So that atmosphere that was created, when you did something wrong, you got called out on it. You took it to heart, and then you took the lesson from Kareem. You went and looked in the mirror and said, yeah, I made a mistake, and now I'm going to learn from it. I'm never going to make that mistake again. And for me personally, most of my motivation to try to be perfect, like I said, I'm not, no one is, was more because I so wanted the respect of Coach Riley and Jerry West. You know, I mean, I wanted the players' respect too, but I really, you know, I just really looked up to, you know, Jerry and Pat, and just wanted them to know that I was trying to be the best I could be every day. So the perfect thing, and I talk about this, about infallibility, and I have a whole chapter about the officials. Officials are expected to be infallible. They're human beings.
Yeah.
Okay? They actually operate, the studies have shown that they operate at 92% of accuracy. And I talk a lot in that chapter about, you know, how they have to work together. Like, they just don't run around on the floor and all different. They have spots they have to go to. Okay? And that works out pretty well. You know, if you have a guy on the strong side, which is the side that the ball's on, and you have another one on the baseline, you know, can see the whole floor, and then the other officials call the slot. Okay. And I explain where their positions are. And that's pretty easy in a half-court set. But now the ball starts moving around and people start moving around, and that means the officials have to move around. And so now they're moving around, the players are moving around, the ball's moving around. There are thousands of decisions that need to be made, and they have to make these decisions at a blink of an eye.
Right.
And they're expected to be infallible. But the people that are screaming at them, are the players and the coaches on both teams, okay, they're not operating at 92%, but they expect the official to.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah.
So now you have players. It's okay to question a call, okay? That's fine. But you can't embarrass the man in front of, or the woman, female officials now, okay, in front of 20,000 people live in the arena and millions of people watching on TV. What message does that send to our children? Because I look at an official as someone that does conflict resolution. Okay, the NBA has a great opportunity to use the NBA officials to teach conflict resolution to young kids. And to my knowledge, we haven't used that. And actually the opposite happens. I mean, guys get fined and stuff for criticizing the officials, embarrassing them. But there's no, okay, so we take your money, but can we use this as a tool to teach young kids? And so what happens is you go to a Little League game, okay, or a Pop Warner football game or CYO basketball game, and now you see the parents screaming at high school officials or, you know, young kids, Little League games. I mean, what are we teaching our children? You know, and so I write that. Once again, the book is about lessons.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lesson there. And I enjoyed writing that chapter. Nobody writes about the officials. They're a big part of the game.
Yeah.
Big part of it.
Oh, yeah. Especially during the last 2 minutes of the game and games are tied.
They could be. I mean, the idea is, you know, to let the players decide the outcome of the game. But the rules are the rules.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're part of you deciding the outcome of the game is following the rules.
Yeah.
And I talk about it right at the end of the chapter, like, why would you want to be an official? I mean, I would never want to be an official. You know, everybody hates you. Both teams. But both teams think they're getting screwed and you're the one that's screwing them. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's a really difficult job. And I've asked a lot of the officials, like, why do you do this? You know, why would you do this for a living? They all say the same thing: for the love of the game. But I think it's a little bit deeper than that. Because I grew up in a family where we respected the police, we respected firemen, we respected people in the armed forces. If you were wearing a uniform, you got our utmost respect.
Yeah.
Okay? And one of the reasons why is I wouldn't want to be any of those things. I wouldn't want to be a cop. I wouldn't want to be a fireman, and I don't want to be a soldier. I don't want people shooting at me. You know, if my home was burning down and my family was in it, I like to think I'd run in there and save them, but I wouldn't want to make a living running into burning buildings. So I have a lot of respect for those people that do that kind of work. Well, okay, an official's not the same as going to war or, being a cop or a fireman, but it is a position where you're trying to control conflict that's taking place on the floor. And you may say it's the love of the game, but I think it's a little bit deeper, that you love the game so much that you want to see it played at the highest level, which means within the rules of the game. You have that much respect for the game that it needs to be played by the rules.
Right.
And I think that's the real driving force. I'm not sure that officials even understand that, but I've been studying them for a long time. They don't, like, I say this in the book, and people know it, but nobody really ever thinks about it. They have an 82-game schedule, just like we do, but they don't have any home games. We have half of our season, we're at home. They're never at a home game. Every game for them is an away game. They don't have a team. They're not part of a team. I mean, there's 3 guys on the court, but they're really not a team like we're a team.
Yeah.
So it's a really difficult life. There's a lot of pressure on them. And, before games, they don't have their own athletic trainer at the game. And so, they get hurt out there. How about if a player plays 48 minutes? Front page news. All 3 officials run all 48 minutes every game. They don't get subbed out. They get hurt. And when they do, they need help. And so you go to the arena, and if I could get over there, I would go over. And when I was over there, I would talk to them. I would pick their brains about stuff. And I learned a lot about officiating. Mostly that I would never want to be one.
Yeah.
Okay. They're great people. Okay? They're usually not the same person off the floor that they are on the floor.
Right.
I think when they check into the game, they take their own personality and they leave it at the scorer's table, and then they become who they need to be.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And then after the game, like if you were ever in the same city with them on a night off, and you met them at a restaurant or something, it's hard to believe that this is the same guy.
Wow.
Yeah, they're good people.
Yeah.
They deserve to be treated that way.
Good. That's good. Right. 32 years with the Lakers. How did you go about balancing your family? You have kids, you have a wife. How did you go about doing that?
It's funny because first thing that popped into my brain is I was doing an interview the other day, and somebody brought up the Forum Club. Okay. And, so one of the things balancing my life was, number one, to stay out of the Forum Club. Okay? There was nothing in there for me. I was a married man. I had children. There was only trouble in there. But it's a great question. People have often asked, like, that life where you're on the road and you're at work all the time and the pressure, how did you do it? I don't know. You just do it.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, you know what needs to be done, and then you go and do it. At the end of the book, in the acknowledgments, I talk about the mother of my children, God rest her soul. Okay? I could not have done my job without knowing that those kids were home with that mother. Okay? Chris Vitti was a wonderful mother to Gary Vitti's children.
Yeah.
And she deserves that credit. There's no way I could have done my job without knowing, even though I'm not there, she's there, and she's the true foundation of my children's upbringing. So I it's not so much how I did it. You know, if she was still alive, we could ask her how she did it, because that was the balancing act. I worked and she took care of the kids, and as they got older, she was a school teacher. She eventually went back and taught school, which was the perfect job and complement for working in, she taught in the same school district that they went to.
Okay.
And so we made it work.
Yeah.
We made it work.
Yeah. During that time, would you bring your kids sometimes to the games to check out, meet the players or just hang out? How was that like?
Yeah, I used to bring the kids all the time, not during the week, but on the weekends. And a lot of times to shoot around on like Sundays. So Sunday morning, we would just go in for a couple of hours in the morning, and I bring the kids, and they knew all the players, and all the players knew my kids, and they'd pick them up and let them dunk the ball and stuff like that. And we had different things that we used, tools for exercise. Somehow they would take something and make it into a toy. It wasn't a toy; it was actually a physical therapy tool, but they'd make it into a toy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because both of my daughters, you talk about people that are not starstruck, they could care. I mean, they grew up with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and later, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
I mean, celebrities to them, they grew up in that life.
Yeah.
So, they're very unimpressed with me, the Lakers, the N.B.A., professional sports. I mean,
that's funny.
The unimpressed is probably the perfect word for what they think of the whole thing.
Chapter 4, one of the things that I really enjoyed that you spoke about, you would say, picture a window frame with 4 panes of glass. Yeah. Number 1, I want you to put how you see yourself. Number 2, I want you to put how you think other people see you. Number 3, I want you to put how other people really see you. And then number 4, I want you to put how you really are. Why would you go through this with the players?
Okay, so we talked about the mission.
Yeah.
Okay, and there has to be leaders. Okay, so you have to first describe the mission, and then once you know what you want to do, one of the analogies I use is for a GPS to work, you have to know 2 things: where you are and where you want to go.
Right.
If you only know one of those 2 things, your GPS is useless. Okay. So Riley was our GPS. He knew where we were, and he knew where we wanted to go. And that was the mission. Okay. But you also have to have leadership within the team. And it really helps if your best player is your leader, because it's not always the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really, really helps if your best player is the leader and he's a good guy. Okay? Because that's not always the case either. So if you don't have a leader within the team, then the coach has to be the leader. And that's really hard on a coach. And so you're always looking for leadership qualities within the team. And so let's say we would bring in a free agent or make a trade, and that person has a reputation of being a leader or a potential leader. And so, like you said, at some point, you got to pick your spots with as an athletic trainer. You figure out what makes players tick. Like some guys need a pat on the back, some guys need a kick in the butt. And it's not just how you do it, but it's when you do it, where you do it, how you do it. And there's no real rules to it. I mean, it's a feel. It's a feeling. It's an intuition.
Right.
Okay? So if we got a player that maybe had some of these qualities, and I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper into his psyche, I'd ask him that exactly what you described. I want you to picture a window frame. Pane 1, I want you to put how you see yourself. Pane 2, I want you to put how you think other people see you. Pane 3, I want you to put how other people really see you. And in pane 4, I want you to put how you really are. Now, think of the possible permutations of those 4 variables. Right. 2 could be the same. None of them can be the same. But if all 4 of them are the same, then that means that you are very true to yourself. And if you want people to follow you, they need to know the true you. And for that to happen, you need to know the true you. You have to be true to yourself. And if you're that way, people will follow you.
Yeah.
And that was the message that I would give. Not everybody got the question. Okay? You pick your spots. You get the guy in the training room, and you got him as a captive audience, and you want to kind of pick his brain a little bit, see where he's coming from. You lay that one on him.
Yeah.
Makes him think. It makes him think.
That's good.
And you cannot. It's a test. For lack of a better word, we'll call it a test. It's really not a test, but it's you can't get around it. You those 4 things. I mean, you can't get around it. Yeah. You have to answer the 4 questions.
Right.
And if they're not all the same, then that's who you are.
Yeah.
Which is not true to yourself.
Yeah. Would you spend a lot of time with the players in the training room? Let's say you guys go into halftime. Would you take those moments to talk to players maybe that felt a little down, maybe they weren't doing so well in game, and then they come back during halftime? Do you talk to them and kind of give this speech?
Yeah, sometimes even during the game, like during a timeout, you might say 1 or 2 words, and they could be so key. I tell you a story. I don't put this in the book because I kind of forgot about it till just now, but I'm pretty sure I still have it. I kept it as a token. So Meta World Peace is one of the sweetest human beings you'll ever meet on the planet. Also one of the toughest. I mean, he's a physically tough guy, right? And so he was struggling a little bit, and he took a piece of scratch paper. I mean, literally, it looked like it came out of the trash can. It was like a torn off piece of paper. And he wrote like 3 things on it. And he came to me and he said, "Can you hold on to this for me during the game? And if I ask you for it, can you give it to me?" I said, "Sure." And so I looked at it, and it was like 3 little things that he wrote down that there were triggers. And I keep it in my pocket. And sometimes he would come and say, "Can I have my paper?" And I give it to him, and he'd look at it. And, these are like 3 things that he would try to remember to do during the game. And sometimes he wouldn't ask me for it, but I thought he needed it. And so I would go, "You need this?" Like I pull it out of my pocket. Yeah. Look at it and give it back to me. I put it back in my pocket. So that would be an example of communicating with your players.
Yeah. You put this in chapter 5. It's good to chase things, and it's good to want more, but your happiness should not rely on it.
That's right. So I bought into the American sports creed that there's winning and there's misery, and there's nothing else in between. So, sports, there's only one team that can win the last game. When you start to look at it that way, everybody else is a loser. Right? It's just that simple. When you're in the NBA,
there's no participation trophies.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like little kids where you get a trophy for showing up and breathing. I mean, you got to win.
Yeah.
And so if you don't, then you're miserable because you have to wait until your next opportunity to win.
Yeah.
And if that's a whole summer, that's a summer of misery. And there was many summers of misery. And then we get to 1991. So our mission was to beat the Celtics, right? And then we did that. And then the next group up was the Pistons. And that became our mission.
Right.
And we did that. Okay. And then the next team was the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
So it's 1991. We play the Bulls in the finals. We lose. So now we have a new mission. And we're miserable because we lost to the Bulls. We go to training camp. From training camp, we go to Paris and play in the McDonald Cup. And then we come back, and we have 2 more preseason games left. And prior to those 2 games, I find out, okay, not the whole team for 2 weeks, but 7 of us knew that Magic Johnson converted seropositive for HIV. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of like an epiphany to me that all of a sudden, this most important thing of winning this championship was really not that important anymore. And really, I started to kind of transform my attitude that, yeah, I mean, it's good to chase things and it's good to want more, but your happiness should not, your total happiness, your life happiness should not rely on it. It's okay to acquire something you're chasing and be happy.
Right.
But if that's all your happiness is based on, acquiring what you're chasing, you will never really find happiness, true happiness. You'll have times in your life that you're happy. When you really look at it, you begin your adult life when you go to college, okay? And you know you're fairly miserable and you're having a good time, but you don't have you really don't have any money. You got some money, you don't have any money. You know, you're studying, you're taking tests, and you just keep saying to yourself, "I just need to get through this. I just need to graduate. Once I graduate, you know, then I'll be happy." Yeah. And you do, and you're happy for a short period of time because now you need a job, okay? And just a foot in the door, okay? And you finally get the job. And so you're chasing your degree. Now you're chasing the job. You get the job. You're happy for a short period of time. So now you're making a couple bucks and you've been driving this clunker car around since college. Now I need a new car. So you save, you know, your pennies and you get a new car. Hey, now I'm happy. But now you need to find someone to share your life with. And you do, and you're happy. But now you need to find a home. Doesn't have to be a big home. Just a little something you call your own.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly chasing. You and your wife, you find a home and you buy the home and, you know, hey, I'm happy. You know, you're still relatively young, but it's all these, you know, spurts of happiness, but in between you're kind of miserable because you're chasing things. You're not really enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
You have your eye on the prize all the time.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have some kids, and now the home's too small, so you need a bigger home. So you get the point, right? You're always chasing something, but true happiness is not achieving what you're chasing. It's actually being grateful for what you already have.
Yes.
And that begins with your health and that of your loved ones.
Yeah.
Because when you have that, even though you don't realize it, okay, and hopefully now that you have me spreading the message, you'll look at your life differently. And it takes a mind shift to do this. It takes a true mind shift. And one of the things I tell people to do is when somebody asks, you walk by people and they go, hey, how you doing? Do they really care how you're doing? I mean, is it a question or is it a greeting? So suppose somebody asks you, hey, how you doing? You said, never better in my life. They'll raise an eyebrow. It'll be very interesting. It's something I want you to try. You go to a store, your family, your friends, whoever asks, how you doing? If you have your health, you shouldn't lie. If you have your health and that of your loved ones, say to that, look them straight in the eye with a smile and go, I've never been better in my life. You're going to be amazed at the reactions that you get. Some people are going to go, yeah, right. Okay, because they think you're being, facetious, sarcastic.
Right.
Okay, because they're miserable, so they expect everybody to be miserable.
Yeah.
Other people are going to go, That's great. I am so happy to hear that.
Right.
You know what? You just made my day. You can change the atmosphere of a workplace, because happiness in a workplace is a very serious problem.
Yeah.
You can change the atmosphere of a workplace with a simple mind shift and a simple answer to the question that's probably asked most in your life. People, instead of saying hi, they go, "Hey, how you doing?" They always ask how you're doing. But do they really care? Is it a question or is it a greeting? Make it a question, give them a positive answer, watch the reaction.
That's good. That is great. I want to talk a little bit about Kobe Bryant and how you have said that he wasn't the most talented.
Yeah. So once again, the book is about life's lessons. And the lesson that I learned mostly from Kobe is that you can never have enough talent, but talent is the most overrated thing in life. It's what you do with your talent that counts. And so I think your audience's heads are going to probably spin around when I make this first comment. Okay? Kobe Bryant was talented. I'm not saying he wasn't. He was talented. We're going to give him that. But what if I told you he wasn't the most talented player on the floor? When you really look at Kobe as a basketball player, okay, he's big. He's not that big. Okay? He was quick. Not that quick. He's fast. Fast and quick are two different things. Okay? You know, quick is first step. Fast is like baseline to baseline. Speed.
Yeah.
Okay? Fast, but not the fastest. He could jump. Didn't jump the highest. Okay? He was strong. Wasn't the strongest. There's really nothing physically, from a physical talented perspective, there's really nothing really special about him. So why is it that he has 5 rings and more talented players have none? So it's not the talent, it's what you do with it. So how did he do it? You know, let's say he was talented. We'll give him that. He worked harder than anyone else. But a lot of people work hard. In addition to working hard, he worked smart. Okay? It's one thing to go out there and beat yourself up physically. That's working hard. It's another thing to work hard and do it intelligently. And that's what he was. He had a very cerebral approach to his drill work, his practicing, his physical conditioning, that whole thing. It just wasn't going out there and you know, sweating as hard as I can and, you know, work until I throw up. And then I can look myself in the mirror and say I couldn't work any harder than I did. Maybe it's not all it's always about, you know, how hard. It's a combination of working out hard, but in an intelligent way. Competitive. More competitive than any person that I had ever been around. He would cheat to beat your 3-year-old in a game of tiddlywinks, okay? Because he had to win. Now, add on to that, like hard work with intelligence, not only was he competitive, if he lost, he used the loss to come back better.
Yeah.
And he had convinced himself that he could do it. He took the words can't and won't out of his lexicon. He just took them out of his vocabulary and replaced those words with can and will. He just convinced them. He believed. He made himself believe. He willed himself to do things that other people just wouldn't have. They would have quit. He just never quit. And he was the toughest, tough, physically, mentally tough guy that I've ever been around, which kind of goes along with that can and will, where he just believed that, that he could do it.
Yeah.
And whatever, a lot of people love him now. He wasn't always loved.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But whether you love him or you hate him, you cannot take those 5 things away from him. That is him. And I say in the book, it wasn't always easy with him. Right? There was it wasn't all fun and games. I mean, there was a lot of heartache and a lot of heartbreak. But in the end, there was heartfelt love. And I mean, he's a very, very special human being.
Yeah. This is probably one of the craziest instances I had seen. He tears his Achilles. You're on the floor. I mean.
So I see him go down, and there's like nobody behind him. And the first thing he does is grab his Achilles. So you ask anyone who's ever torn their Achilles, they'll say, everybody says the same thing. I thought somebody kicked me. And I turned around and there was nobody there. Okay. If anybody ever tells you that or you ever feel that, guess what? You just ruptured your Achilles. So the first thing he did, he hits the floor. The first thing he does is he reaches back and he grabs it. Later, so I knew, so now we got a timeout. I go run out there. I figured this is what happened. I don't know for sure, but I'm already thinking that.
Right.
And then he tells me, he goes, I thought somebody kicked me. I turned around, there's nobody there. I said, well, it sounds like you ruptured your Achilles. I said, we got to get you in the back and take a look at it. And he goes, well, maybe I can pull it. Maybe I can pull it down. Like that. That's what I'm talking about this Ken and Will thing with him. And he reaches back there, and it's not like I don't want the audience to think that your Achilles like kind of rolls up your leg. I mean, it's still there. It's like the mid substance that's ruptured, right? But he's like yanking on his Achilles because he feels like it needs to get pulled down towards his heel bone. Of course you can't do that. And he says, well, can't you tape it or something? I said, no, you can't tape it. I said, but here's what you can do. I said, you were fouled on this play. So if you can't shoot the free throws, okay, the Warriors, because we were playing the Golden State Warriors, I said, they're going to pick the worst free throw shooter on our team. And you're going to, you're out of the game. You're going to the locker room. You're going to the training room. That person's going to shoot the free throws. I said, you're not going to damage your Achilles anymore shooting free throws. I said, I'll let you shoot them if you want. He said, I'm shooting them.
Wow.
Now, what he did do, though, okay, we were on their end of the floor. So this is a full timeout now, right? He walks back to our bench where the huddle is with a torn Achilles. Then has to walk the full length of the court back again to shoot the free throws. I told Mark Jackson, their coach, and I told the lead official, I said, I'm pretty sure he ruptured his Achilles. I'm going to let him shoot the free throws. Okay? Make or miss, we're going to foul, which means it's a dead ball.
Yeah.
And now I can take him off the floor.
Right.
Okay? So everybody knew what was going on. There's good sportsmanship. As a matter of fact, Mark Jackson later came to me and he said, Gary, I'm sorry. I should have just called it a timeout. I said, that's okay. And he walked on his own power. That's a long walk, okay, from the visitor's bench off the floor and then all the way back to the locker room. And I'm pretty sure it was kind of a dig to Paul Pierce, because when we lost in 2008 to the Celtics and Pierce went down, he's rolling around, writhing in pain on the floor, and they bring a wheelchair out and they wheel him into the back, like he's going to the emergency room. And then all of a sudden, he comes running out on the court and lights us up the rest of the game. He has a big game and they win, and we lose the championship to the Celtics. So I kind of think that was Kobe's way.
I've seen also that you even popped his finger back in, right?
Yeah, many times.
Man. And then he just walks.
Yeah.
A funny story, but I don't know if you saw this or not, but Paul Pierce recently admitted that instance where he got hurt. He said he actually had to poop And that's why. And then he came back and it was all good. But he like
when I have to go, I don't roll around like that. I think I still have good control, but that doesn't sound like the right thing to do. But
Gary, for those that aspire to be like yourself, because you've been so successful and you've worked for such a legendary franchise, what's your advice for those that want to get into this field, want to do sports medicine, want to become a trainer? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, my advice is go to a program that has a great reputation. The head athletic trainer there is a well-noted individual that has lots of contacts, that's graduated a lot of athletic trainers and placed them, because it is a network of athletic trainers. Like if I was looking for an athletic trainer, there's certain people that I would call.
Yeah.
And say, hey, listen, this is what I'm looking for. Do you have anybody, or anybody that knows somebody? And so, like we talked earlier, you could be the best athletic trainer in the world, but if nobody knows who you are, it's going to be hard for you to break in.
Yeah.
The opposite's true. If you know everybody, but you're not really well respected for your talent, nobody's going to hire you. So it's a combination of trying to be the best that you can possibly be. Our industry now is a very evidence-based industry. There's a lot of science behind everything that we do. And so you need to be evidence-based. You need to stay current. Now, there are some things that are clinical in nature, meaning they're not evidence-based, but they work.
Yeah.
I mean, why? We're not completely sure. We have maybe this, maybe that, maybe because of this, maybe because of that. We really can't nail it down, through science. But, whether it's placebo or there's actually, a therapeutic effect from some physiological thing that we're doing, bottom line is we've done it enough times that, if we do this, then we get this.
Yeah.
Okay? So be the best you can be around the best people that you can be around, and network. Okay. And, just because you're in the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball or the NHL, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you're the best trainer or the greatest trainer in the world. I mean, I had a really great career. But, if I ended up at a small university or a high school or something like that, I would have been the same person. Yeah. I mean, I would have given it all I had and happy to be an athletic trainer. One last thing, and I have in the book about, there's a chapter, it's called Givers versus Takers. This might look like really cool to young people, but you got to be a giver to be an athletic trainer. Givers go with takers. Takers don't go with takers. Okay, that's a very hard relationship because they both want.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Givers go with takers, and takers go with givers. Takers are going to go with givers because they give.
Yeah.
And they take. Okay. Givers are going to go with takers also because they give, and there's something in it for us as givers. We get a satisfaction of giving something to someone. If they're a giver, if you have two givers, that's hard. Okay, because neither one of them wants to accept.
Yeah.
No, allow me. No, allow me. No, allow me. No, allow me. So you got to really know yourself. You got to look at the window panes of truth to yourself. Am I a giver? Because you got to give till it hurts.
Yeah.
Because they don't always appreciate what you're doing. So, that's what we're looking for, but we don't always get it.
Right.
So, those are the characteristics, take can and won't, can't and won't out of your lexicon.
Yeah.
I mean, I said can't one time to Pat Riley, and I never said it again after that. It was very early in my career, and we played the Philadelphia 76ers, and then we bust up to Washington to play the Bullets, now the Wizards.
Yeah.
The Wizards have their arena downtown. The Bullets, played in Landover, Maryland, way, way out in the country. So it was a long bus ride in the morning, to get up early. You get in late because you bust up. It's, 2:00 in the morning before you get to bed. Now you got to get up early, wake everybody up, drive all the way out there, work out for an hour, drive all the way back. I mean, it was a hassle. So it's, between 1 and 2 in the morning, and Riley looks over at me and he says, I don't want to drive all the way out to Landover tomorrow morning. Find another gym for shoot around. Mm-hmm. I look at my watch. I go, Pat, it's 1:00 in the morning. I can't. I used the word can't. I said, I can't find another gym at 1:00 in the morning. This is no cell phones, right? Mm-hmm. In these days. He very calmly looked at me and said, well, have you tried?
Wow.
And I said, no. He goes, well, try. And so I went to my hotel room. I got on the phone. I woke some people up. They woke some other people up. And we ended up practicing at Georgetown University the next morning, 5-minute ride. And that's when I realized very often we say we can't when we can.
Yeah.
So young people, old people, all people, take can't and won't out of your lexicon and replace those words with can and will.
That's good. That's good. Gary Vitti, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, this is 32 years of titles and tears from the best seat in the house with Gary Vitti. Thank you so much for your time, Gary. This was awesome. There's so much more you guys can check out in this book. You can order it from what website?
Amazon. Just put my name in the search box. Mm-hmm. Hey, and it'll pop up. It's in Kindle or paperback.
Yeah, I did the Kindle version, so I'm waiting for the paperback. Yeah. But episode number 20 with Gary Vitti. Thank you, guys. Welcome back. Thank you for checking out episode number 20 with Gary Vitti. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I certainly did. There was a lot to learn from him about his time with the Los Angeles Lakers, as well as his life and his accomplishments. Really, really cool to hear a different perspective of the NBA. I invite you to buy the book if you have not already. Get it on Amazon. Episode number 21 comes out next week. See you guys soon.